Hey y'all, welcome to the Moving with Millennials podcast with your favorite millennial realtors.
We are 4 top producing agents in the DFW area, and we are ready to share the good, bad, and the real life of real estate.
Whether you're thinking about getting into real estate, already an agent, or just curious about what your agent really does, join us.
Tune in every Wednesday to see what it's really like to be on this side of the transaction.
All right, hey guys, welcome back to this week's episode. So, oh my gosh, this is kind of getting real.
Yeah.
We just did photos like
So
yesterday,
fun.
right?
Yeah.
Was it 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
My days are like,
location.
yeah, but we did our photos for this podcast, and so that's the entry photo or the photo you see at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was so much fun though, and
It
she
was
did a
fun.
great job.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
She did.
Once we all got there.
Yeah. Yeah, Maggie was a tad late, but that's
Just a little bit,
okay.
yeah.
She went to the wrong
She got
location.
Yeah.
But we're really excited about today's topic. This is something,
I mean, it's the most common question I think probably all of us are asked as
Yes.
realtors. We'll get messages from friends, strangers, people we kind of know, like, hey, I'm thinking about getting into real estate. What do you recommend? So we're just going to talk about that. You know,
Yeah.
what it was like becoming a realtor, the steps, how much it costs, the nitty gritty, all the real stuff.
yeah, like what it's really like. So we're going to title this episode, So You Want to Be a Realtor. Because we get that, yeah, like
All the
Jake
time.
said, we get it all the time. So let's talk about that. Let's dive into...
It just made me that makes you think of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And I think people think that when they think like, I want to be a realtor and a millionaire. It's going to be so easy.
I can't tell you how many times people think like, oh, you
It's
must
easy
make so
money.
much money. Yeah, like it's and like as if it's like all about the money.
Right,
So
for
we'll
sure.
get into that.
I
But
saw a stat the other day said 90% of the money made in real estate is made by the 10% of
Yep.
realtors.
Yes.
And so if you want to be a realtor and you want to be successful, you have to be a part of that 10%, which means you're always
On your way.
working, you're always after the next, chasing the next one.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
for sure.
it's hard work, but it's definitely worth it.
yeah, I think we definitely need to dive into like part-time, full-time, the differences of that too.
Mhm.
So let's just start like kind of at the beginning. So you want to be a real estate agent, you're approaching us, like I'm going to start talking to you about getting your license. So who wants to talk about, Maggie, do you want to talk about like the steps of like getting your real estate license?
Yeah, so step 1 would be figuring out like the type of school you want to go to. We all did Champions. Jake, I think
Except
you
for
did.
me.
Yeah, so Champions was great for me.
You did it in person.
I did it in person.
I did it during COVID, so I did everything virtual, and then
I did in person, just
Just
because
a
I
couple
wanted to
years
get done.
ago.
Yeah, like 8 billion
Yeah.
years ago.
And I did a self-paced one. I believe it's called Real Estate Express. I was still working full-time in my design job, so it gave me the flexibility to read the material, take the test at my pace, which was fantastic. If you are not someone that is historically good at school and self-motivated, I would not recommend it because it is really easy just to kind of like let it go. And I don't know, you guys probably don't realize this, but like you pass 6 classes or 6 courses, and if you don't pass them all within a certain amount of time, you have to retake or start over. So that's something, if you're doing self-paced, you still have to give yourself deadlines, which was really important for me because I didn't want to have to start over any of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And oh, go ahead.
no, and it does not matter where you go, what school you go to. I want to point that out because that's really big. People like, does it matter? And I went to a school, Champions. I think you guys went
I loved
there. It was great. He went to an online
That's
school, but it doesn't mean like he's going to be more favorited at a brokerage because of that. Like it does not
No,
matter
they don't
where
even
you
ask.
go.
Yeah.
They don't care. Just get your license.
Right.
pass your test and you're in.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
so it's 6 30-hour courses, and you have to pass a test for each one, and then there's a final licensing exam. So it's 180 hours of classwork.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to, did you just say, you
And-
take a test after each class and then you take your prep class, which for me that was like gold.
Beneficial.
I took the prep
100%.
class twice and that was just, the test in itself, so that's
the test
really,
is hard too.
It
I've always hated taking tests, but I did feel like the test was stressful.
it was. It's it's
Just-
broken up into 2 parts, national and state. And
I've actually heard it's gotten harder since I've taken it. Now,
It was
it
hard.
was not like it was super easy, and it was.
Yeah.
you had to do the prep and stuff, but I've heard it's even getting harder.
It's very common to not pass it your first time.
Yeah.
I think all of us did, but it is very, very common to not pass either the state or the national portion your first time. So don't let that discourage you if that
Right.
happens. And the other, like, kind of the nitty-gritty truth is that test is really not a reflection of the job that you're going to be
It's
doing anyways.
Let's talk about that
Yeah.
because You take
because
this test, you take these classes, and yet you know nothing.
Yeah.
But you think, right? Like you think like I'm gonna pass the test, I'm a realtor.
Yeah.
You have no idea how to close a transaction.
Open a lockbox.
Find clients.
Yeah. You just know how to not get sued.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah,
It's a CYA.
for sure.
180 hours of CYA.
Yeah. So
I think something to point out too, just because you get your Texas license doesn't mean you can have a license in every state.
Right.
If you want to
yeah.
work in Florida or Illinois, you have to pass that test again in each state.
for sure, and it's time. So I think it was like 180 question or 150 for national. I passed the national the first time, failed the state.
Okay.
2 points. I was 2 points away.
no.
And then the next day you have 24 hours, you can schedule it. And then 24 hours later I took it in the middle of nowhere and I passed. So
Dude.
one thing to point out is like I really focused on the national part over the state.
It's the easier portion.
Yeah, well, but I thought, I don't know, I was just like,
Because
state
there's
will
more
be easy.
questions.
So yeah, I would focus on both of them and not do what I did, but
Yeah. And then so once you get your license, I mean, you've got to go through fingerprinting. So there's all sorts of things in between.
They do a
but-
background check.
Right.
Things like that. So the National Association of Realtors, the Texas Association of Realtors, and our local board. I think it's the Texas Association that you send up your fingerprints to, and they're the ones that do your background check
Yeah.
and all of that. So then once you pass and then have passed the other portions, then you officially have your license, but you can't practice real estate yet. You have to
Right.
hang your license at a brokerage. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of like really the next step is once you find out that you passed your test. And some people interview brokerages ahead of time.
Yes.
Most people do. That's what I recommend to people is get your brokerage first as you're still prepping for your test, because a lot of times different offices will have different
Training.
things, training or different ways to help you even prep for the test. So you can certainly be interviewing brokerages ahead of time.
And let's talk about that process of interviewing brokers, because I think people think like you're being interviewed, and yes, you are. I mean, they're certainly making sure that you're a good fit too for their brokerage because they don't want to just hire anybody.
Right.
But
Making them money.
you're also going to be interviewing them. So when you hang your license under a brokerage, you really want to focus on some things like what kind of training are they providing you? Commission splits are a whole thing. So asking those questions. What else?
office
Do they-
bills,
office
Transaction
education.
fees,
Do they have an education board that
Right.
can have you classes?
coaching,
coaching,
Yeah.
printing, marketing materials. Do they have vendors that they already have great relationships with that they can introduce you to as a new agent? Because as a new agent, you're not going to know what lenders are great. You're not going to know what title companies use. You're not going to know what handyman
Yeah.
needs to do those repairs. So it's really beneficial if you can find an
Inspector.
office that has those preferred vendors in place that you can then start assessing those relationships and at least have a leg up. I feel like.
Right.
for sure.
I think what's the biggest thing you think from a brokerage? Like, what's the most important thing when you were interviewing brokers? Like, what was the one thing you were really looking for?
Training,
Training.
coaching, training,
Okay.
and overall environment, because I interviewed
Culture.
with culture, yes.
Culture.
So I interviewed at 3 total, and my office was I just felt like it was
That
the,
was it.
the best
Yeah.
fit.
Brandie, what about you?
Culture was for me. So I was at the previous office, and I just didn't feel like a perfect fit for me. It was a great office. I just didn't feel like I thrived there, and so I actually met Maggie on Instagram, and I interviewed at her office, and it was exactly what I was looking for. So, and my career changed when I jumped offices. So offices are really important, and it's just that culture and the training and the coaching and just making sure it feels like somewhere where you want to thrive, and you will
Yeah.
thrive, and you can thrive at.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I knew I wanted to be with the brokerage that I'm with, so I only interviewed with like 5 different offices of the same brokerage because it's the same brokerage, each office was independently owned and operated, so they provided different things.
Right.
I was actually set to go sign that day with another brokerage, and it was in downtown Dallas, and I'm so happy I didn't because I would have been like
Your
miserable
commute.
driving to downtown Dallas
Uh-huh.
every day. And this day I was going to sign, someone called me from the office that I'm at now and was like, hey, just come meet with us like one time. And as I'm like asking questions, realizing what I was going to be getting at this brokerage, they were saying, oh no, like this is how, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? Like I can't believe I was going to
Right.
do this when I can get this. So just as I'm interviewing them, I'm realizing, okay, this is where I need to go. And it was culture, training, just different things like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Jake?
I think same as all this. I think it's
Yeah.
training and culture for me as well. That's what I really looked into. Maggie and I started at the same time, so I think we were really lucky that We ended up in the same office. Same thing, I actually did not expect to be with the brokerage that I am with. I wanted to be somewhere small and boutique. Just thought that fit me a little better. But I'm super thankful because what I've gotten from the office that I'm at, again, the training has been phenomenal. And now being someone that I get to have a hand in deciding what that training looks like for people is really cool. So that's been a really kind of fascinating part for me I jumped like head first, whatever you want to say, into like all the training and all the education, going to all the classes, and then now getting to be in charge of that, kind of know what that looks like for the office. So, so that to me,
opportunity and being in an office where you have that opportunity to grow, which I think is important. Okay, so after you choose an office, what else is there to expect? What other fees? What else comes with it?
So there's definitely fees. I mean, to get your license, the classes, all of that require fees. But then you have to hang your license not only with the brokerage, and they may have some startup fees, so you want to ask those questions. But you also, everybody, in order to sell real estate, at least in the state of Texas. By the way, I feel like we need a disclaimer. We're in the state of Texas, so if you're listening, which would be super cool if someone, one day we get out of state people listening. We only talk and we know Texas real estate, so it may be totally different in your state. So talk to someone local. But there are fees that we have to hang under, like our county association dues. We've got TREC, which is our Texas Real Estate Commission. So we have to hang our licensing under them as well and pay dues for them.
On something she just said, if you are from another state and you need to reach someone in your state about it, you can actually reach out to us and we will more than likely be able to know someone. We go to huge events and conferences and things like that, so I feel like we probably each have a fairly good network across the country. So reach out. We may not be able to answer your question, but we can get you into contact with someone that can.
Absolutely.
So are we talking like fees? A couple $100, couple $1,000?
Oh yeah, no.
$1,000.
It's a couple thousand, really, when you look at classes and all the initial
start
startup
to finish,
fees.
headshots, business cards, signs for the front yard, your MLS dues.
I mean, on average, when someone tells me like, "Hey, how much should I expect?" I just tell them about $3,000. Because that does include licensing. That includes like the signs and things like that. Any little startup stuff. That's just for starting.
And I want to say, it's important to start off on the right foot. It's also important to know where you are financially. So you may or may not need yard signs, for example, in the very beginning. You may not get listings right away. So why spend that $150 per sign? Up front or whatever it is. Yeah, so
do you pay for headshots? Because for marketing and social media these days, I feel like that's something you do need to pay for is headshots.
Or, sometimes a brokerage will pay for those for some people. So
I think my office does, they pay for the headshots.
Yes.
Also, not only do you need to be prepared to spend this money, I think it's also we should talk about, you should have saved up probably 3 to 6 months. If you're planning on jumping in this full time and being successful in real estate, we'll talk about part-time, full-time here in a minute. But if you plan to jump in this and you have no other source of income, you need to have probably 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up, because be expecting to not close something within the first months. For 3 to 6 months.
Even if you've got a contract your first day, the likelihood most contracts close in 30 days.
Right.
So you are not going to have a paycheck at least 30 days unless somehow miraculously you have an investor lined up that was going to cash close in 10 days right when you got your license.
Yeah. Well, they say that our business is 90 days out. So the minute you lead generate to find business, from the minute you meet with them and they find something to the day you close, you're looking at 90 days to get paid on that effort. So 90 days out is usually the average.
I think that's something a lot of people don't know. People expect they just sold a house and it took them 3 days.
Exactly.
It's not like HGTV where look at a house.
I'm working with clients right now that we're looking, and I met them October of last year at a different house. So it takes time.
Right.
And it's June right now, just in case it's just perspective.
So 6 months later, almost a year later,
right.
And I definitely have had people where it's 2-3 years later they finally get to the point where they're ready to buy a house.
Right.
But I've been talking to them off and on, just touching in, making sure I'm answering questions before they become clients. So it is a longer process than I think a lot of people think.
One of my buyers is about to close, and I first met him in December, so that was 6 months ago.
Yeah. And that's why when you're brand new, it's the first 18 months, I think they say 18 months is kind of that that's going to be the toughest part of your real estate career, or it could be, because you're building your pipeline, if you will, which means you're basically building connections with people, you're getting your name out there, you're letting people know you're a real estate agent.
The flow of your transactions.
Right.
So think of it as, like she said, a pipeline. So it's going to be people in order of how are they going to get through and purchase. So
right.
If you have gaps in that pipeline, it's not good. If you have a delay in the start of that pipeline, that's not good. So that pipeline constantly has to be full.
Right.
And so it is about starting that up. But it takes a little while from like when you start, like she's saying,
right.
for it to kind of catch up.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the 2-year mark. So
yes.
the statistic for people that don't
Yeah,
survive the first years. So one part that we mentioned is getting licensed. In Texas, you actually have to renew your license every 2 years. And so the statistic for people that do not renew their license, I think it's either 87 or
84 is less than
Yeah, so it's like 83 to 85%, let's say, do not renew their license. So, it's like starting a restaurant. I mean, it's almost impossible to make it your first 2 years. Not almost impossible, but it takes a lot of hard work. You're not going to just fall into this business and make money.
You can't just sell real estate to your friends unless you know Joe Schmo
You
on
can.
every block.
Well, no, you can,
but not make it
but
a full-time thing.
Right.
But
you can't
to make it profitable, because you have to understand you're kind of you're a business owner.
Yeah,
like,
kind of. Yeah,
you are a business owner, so treat it like, in most businesses, they're not making profit for the first 3 years of a business. So maybe it's not that, like that for real estate, because we don't have as much overhead, if you will, but you definitely are not, it takes a good 3+ years to really get it going. And that honestly was about the 3-year mark is really when I started feeling, okay, I figured this out. I mean, trust me, there are days where I'm like, I have no idea what's happening, and I'm just all over the place with transactions. But it's like I'm actually figuring out, I'm getting maybe some clients that are coming to me now, and I'm not having to do, so it's like the goal is to do that, but you got to work to get there.
I feel like I'm the baby of the group, but I feel like you always are learning. I think that's something you can definitely touch on.
Absolutely.
Like you're gonna always learn something. You always have to be able to pivot and change and be willing to learn and listen and.
Well, yeah, the contracts change. I can tell you the contracts in the 8 years I've been doing this has changed at least 3 times since I've done this.
Yeah, I've seen 2 since I've been in.
Okay, maybe more than that even.
Yeah.
But they change, and you have to keep up with that and rules and training all the time. That's why every 2 years you renew your license.
Which is additional hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
And more money,
education, classes that you have to meet.
Let's talk about continuing costs. Like, that we're talking about startup, but then continuing every 2 years, like Jake said, you've got to pay to renew your license. But we also have, Maggie brought up Supra and all that. Why don't you talk about that?
So Supra is the lockbox that goes on the door. So you have to pay for that or get a lockbox for your listing so that agents can get access to the house.
And that's like $17 a month. How much do we pay for the app?
Yeah.
I paid like $150 a quarter, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the Supra thing is like $150.
Well, then you have the app to get into the houses.
Yeah.
It's like 2 different apps.
Don't quote us on
$100.
prices.
Yeah. I mean,
and then showing time.
That's included in our office bill, I believe. So
that's how you actually schedule the showings.
Yeah.
Which I think it's funny because you schedule on one app and then you use a different app to actually open the lock.
Maybe one day they'll come together.
Maybe
in a future podcast we can talk about like Texas transactions. We can take them through a transaction.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
from showing a house all the way how we do it.
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
Or like crazy stories that have happened. Like
we got those.
Or how to open different lock boxes.
Yes, okay, because there's Supra is the
that
main
needs
one.
to be a video though.
But there are so many different lock boxes, and like sometimes one of the ones that like.
Yes.
So there are these ones that have like code, and it's almost looks like an old keypad phone. Yes,
you
push in different ones.
It's like a silver one.
And
it's
you
so old
You
school.
scroll the numbers.
And every time I see one, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, you're gonna be there for a minute.
Yeah.
I laughed the other day because I watched another agent, and I do this too. They couldn't find where the lockbox was.
Yes.
Because it's
usually like on a plant.
Usually it's on the front door, but this one was up on the lantern light up here, and he was like looking around, and I'm like, that's life of a realtor.
I show condos, so sometimes condos they'll all be you'll see 15 lock boxes on one fence. And some of them are labeled, and some of them are not. So it's like you see all of us trying to flip over these lock boxes to try to figure out which one is the one that I need. because it's of course like Supra will open any of them.
Right.
So like I need to only open the one that's for me.
Seriously.
I love it.
Yeah. So
Or
So you mean it's not just like HGTV where you just, you walk in, the doors open, lights are on.
yeah, I only show 3 properties. We discuss them and they pick the one.
And then I close the next day.
I mean, I showed 6 properties to one client just this morning. So
We should talk
Crazy.
about like how we do showings and showing it like every day too.
Well, like let's talk about like the day to day. Like, what does our day to day really look like? Because like I said, it's not like
Changes every day.
HGTV. So
Yeah, it's
Normally I
different.
wake up, have my coffee, go through all my emails.
emails.
phone calls to clients,
Emails.
following up with lenders, title company, work on marketing, social media. It's just, I think those are the main things.
A lot of
Doing
background.
showings and
a lot of background things, and I think that's one thing is
Canvassing.
real estate agents are kind of like we're like this catch-all. Like we do so many things, like
I find
market, do
octopus
this.
at times. It's
Yes.
like there's 8 different arms doing 8
Yes.
different things while my brain tries to process
And do
10
two
different
different
things.
Uh-huh.
While I'm also like
Oh.
talking to my phone, telling her to take a note. I'm not gonna say it because I don't want my phone to light up. But you know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm always doing something, but also thinking about other
Yes.
things
Yes.
that I'm not actually
It's like-
you
doing.
just have to be really good at multitasking.
Yeah.
Or have an assistant that can do that for you.
Yes.
Yes.
And taking notes. I think all of us work off of different checklists, whether or not it's a digital version
Yeah.
or like a daily written down
I need to
version.
write it down every day.
I think we should talk about that in more detail. Like
Yeah.
I think that's a great podcast topic. As we talk, we're like, podcast
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
it. But it definitely is not like we said HGTV where you walk in, you're showing houses. As you can see, there's so many other things you have to do. Let's talk about like finding
I would
business.
say so.
That's
the
the
best.
that's the most common misconception.
Well, I think that's the key thing is as you're working on lender questions, as you're working on questions from title, as you're working on all of your current transactions that are already happening, you still have to be finding new business.
Yes.
Right.
Otherwise, you get that lag in your pipeline or that gap like we mentioned.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's really important to know is no matter what, we don't have a routine, but no matter what you're doing, some part of you has to be focused on finding new contacts.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I think let's get real.
So-
that's the podcast,
Yeah,
right?
real.
We're getting real. Because it's not. We are working the business, and we, like Jake said, we're working it. But if you don't have business to work, you're not
You're
doing
not-
anything,
Yeah,
right?
you're
So
not working.
So for me, I mean, this is still my first year. So what I did, I just canceled these last week, was I paid for leads for the better part of this year. And
which you can do. There are people who
Oh.
pay for leads, but as you get to
For
know us,
those of you that are listening to the podcast and not watching one of our videos, the 3 of us, our eyeballs almost just fell out of our head.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
it's
and
like
it's
one of
just
those
like
things
so
where
hard because you're so desperate when you're new to have this business, but you
Absolutely.
find out that these leads aren't all made up to be what they are.
I'm taking mental note too. We're gonna do a podcast about how we find our business.
yeah.
Because
Okay, yeah.
we don't pay, like Brandie was paying for leads and we
No,
kept
she doesn't.
knocking her and we're
Not
like,
anymore.
quit that. Like there's so many other ways you can get business and we're going to
Sure.
talk about
That's
that.
a good topic.
But you have to find your business. Your broker
Always.
does not just hand you free business, and keyword free. They will hand you business, but again, if you want to pay for that business, you can get it. But we'll talk about lead generation in another topic.
Yeah.
The big thing that I did learn this year was going to broker open houses. That's the best way to like meet,
Okay,
mingle
I like
new
that.
people, and like just go and like shake hands. Like the more people's hands you shake, even if it's different title companies, different lenders, different people, like even that is just getting out there and practicing
For sure.
walking through a home, practicing Instagram stories, like getting on there and doing that stuff in these broker open houses to me has been really beneficial. So
Yeah.
if you're new, do that. You'll get emails.
I think
Promise.
that's. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just teaming up with vendors, lenders. Like I have a lender that I have a good relationship with, and yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the same thing. Is I think in reality, our job is really all about relationships, and I think people think that when they hear an agent say that, they think like my relationship with my clients. That is obviously a very important part, clients and past clients, but also the relationships with other agents and your relationships with your
Yes.
vendors. I've had other agents from other offices that sometimes can't work a transaction, or they, like, hey, I don't know this person very well, or it's out of my area. Do you want to take it? I've had agents from across the country send me, referrals,
Yeah.
and I think, and I've gotten, I've gotten leads from like my title rep that I typically use. So it's those relationships that can really help. Those people are going to kind of pour into you and help you grow. they want to see you succeed. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
And people who are throughout the country that you might not think you can help. So being vocal on Instagram and social media. My sister's selling her house in Virginia, and I found her a realtor. So
Right.
I'm getting a referral fee for that. So everyone you know in the country can help you.
Right.
Yeah.
I have 2 buyers right now, or 1 seller, 1 buyer, and they're referrals from different agents from different cities and states. So,
And you will also run across the same agents as you, the more you do business.
Yes.
So like at the beginning of my career, I was a little, not tough, but I was like, sometimes I would like kind of get in an argument with an agent, and then I learned.
No.
For good reasons for my clients.
Right.
But as I realized it, I'm like, man, I need to like probably tone it down,
You're
like
like, do not work
figure
with
out.
this.
Yeah, right. I might be on someone's list.
Yeah.
But they ask me sometimes for advice, and I'm like, look, the ultimate goal, you may not like the agent you're working with, but the ultimate goal is what's the, we're trying to sell this house, right? We want to make our clients happy. So I realized kind of in that process of me like bickering with other agents that I'm like, I may run across this agent in another transaction, and maybe I don't love them or like them a ton or the way they do business, but I want to make sure they're okay with me.
Respect.
right.
So
that recently happened
I'm
too.
respectful.
Yeah. It's no matter what, like, even if you're on opposite sides of the transaction, like you said, you want the same thing. One client wants to buy the house, the other client wants to sell the house. So the agent's job is to represent what each of their clients want and get that done, and
Right.
and in a respectful and a
Civil
and a
Right.
legal way, So I think that's really important. So again, if you're like thinking about becoming a realtor, know that you're going to deal with people all day, every day. If you're introverted, you have to learn how to balance that.
Yeah.
I think at least some of us, I'm definitely more introverted. I would
Me.
not, yeah. So I think
they're
you
the
have,
introverts.
Yes, I think you have to learn how to recharge in between showings. Like it's like put on my favorite song as I'm driving from one house to the other. There's little things you have to
Get
do.
a coffee and go. Like if you gotta be out, get something, a treat, and let it go.
Because it's all about relationships. You constantly have to be plugged into people.
Well, and I think it's also important to say, like, I was actually having this conversation yesterday with just one of my friends, that we're not in the business, real estate agents are not in the business to sell houses. I know that sounds really shocking, but
Provide a service.
we're providing a service, we're selling ourselves, so you have to learn how to sell yourself, and with that comes like building the relationships and things like that. But we're more of like real estate consultants. I wish they would call us that instead of sales agents, because we're consulting whether you're buying or selling a house, and we'll talk about how we can help you with those in another episode. But how many times have I said in another episode? In another
I don't
episode.
know, I think that's the name of this
Take shots.
episode. Is that another episode?
It's gonna be a drinking
That's the
for
name
anyone
of
who's
it, yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so take a drink if you heard. Yeah.
Okay, Andy, go in.
But now I'm forgetting. But yeah, we are in the process of consulting and educating them, making the best decisions, whether they're buying or selling a house. We're not here to be like, hey, this house right here is like got it all, and like you love it. Like
We're
no.
doing this because we love to serve others. I think
Right.
and
There's so many steps of a transaction, and it's like it takes you have to advise your
Right.
clients.
You're
on every
advising along
part,
the way.
whether it's a buyer or seller, and
And we can never make the decision for our clients. I mean, there are times where I haven't agreed with my clients' decisions about whether or not they want to pay a certain price, and I think it should be higher or lower, or whether or not they're going to dig their heels in and walk away from a transaction over an amount that I think is not worth walking away. Different things. All we can do is educate and counsel, and our clients make those decisions.
Yeah, and realize it's them buying the house or selling the house, so it is ultimately their decision, but we consult that.
Right.
And
go ahead.
And we also when it comes to like right now, my brother's buying a house, and I'm really consulting him with like, hey, like, do you really want to spend this on a monthly payment? He's thinking, and I'm like having to consult him. Now, if he were not my brother, I may say, look, it's not my business of what you want to spend on a monthly basis, but I just want to make sure you understand, like, here's how much you're going to be spending on a monthly basis. Does this work for you?
Right.
So consulting in those ways too.
I think too, you have to know, like, going into real estate, being a realtor means you have to serve everyone differently. I think all of our clients, we kind of wear different hats for. I just got a client under contract yesterday, and they have an 18-month-old. They just moved here, don't have any babysitters. So he comes with us every time. And so they were going through the contract, and I knew he just wanted to go run around, so I took him outside and we played in the rocks. Like, so it's you kind of have to be everyone to everything and serve everyone with love and treat everyone kindly.
Yeah, you have to be very what's the word?
Malleable.
Like malleable. That's exactly malleable. Like You gotta be
flexible.
good with kids. You gotta learn how. You gotta keep toilet paper in your car. If someone's got it.
Rain boots.
Go to the bathroom.
Rain
Yeah, rain boots.
Yeah.
So it's like you
That's
gotta.
in your car. We should talk about that.
Yeah.
Take a shot.
We'll-
in your next in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about what we bring on showings. But you have to learn how to do that, and that may come with like not experience, but like come as you like figure out. Like you'll
Right.
learn what you need to do, because you're not again going to learn that when you get your real estate license. But it's just know that we're all these different things.
Right.
We're not just one thing. So anything else you guys can think of about getting your real estate license that if you're thinking about they need to know?
I think we should say like if you do, you can always write in the comments or send us an email or
Yeah.
Yeah.
answer
Absolutely.
questions afterwards too.
Yeah, so if you have questions, yeah, absolutely.
So you
Anytime
can pick
we do a podcast, if you guys have questions, like message us. Maybe we need like an
Tweet
email.
me, beat me. What's that song? The lyrics.
Call me, beat me,
Yes.
reach me.
Please wait,
Call me,
wait.
maybe.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Kim Possible.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of call me maybe. What's
Okay,
that?
we all operate on different wavelengths. Somehow we match. It's so funny. I think the only other thing I was going to add is I have found it really valuable to be in an office that is a tangible brick and mortar office. I think there's a big difference in real estate right now being virtual office where you never actually go in an office. I feel like I learned through osmosis, kind of just being around super successful agents that have been in the business many more years than I have, hearing their conversations, hearing the things that they talk about and just getting to engage with them. That was really helpful for me. So if you're going to do some sort of brokerage that is virtual, I would just make sure that you find some sort of agent that you can shadow. I think that is one of the most important parts, is having a mentor of some sort. If it's one mentor or if it's just, like I said, being around a lot of really talented agents, I think that's really important in how you actually learn how to do the job.
Yeah.
Since school does not really prepare you for a day-to-day.
For
Awesome.
sure.
I think that's it. I think we leave it at that.
Sweet.
Awesome.
I love the last
All
word.
right. That's a wrap. See you
Bye,
guys.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.